The 1940s were a pivotal time in automotive history. With World War II halting production for several years, the cars that came before and after the war reflect a unique period of design experimentation and resource scarcity. But not every car from this decade was a winner. Some models had designs that were too quirky for their own good, while others were simply poor performers. Let's take a look at the 13 worst and silliest American cars from the 1940s, featuring bizarre designs, underpowered engines, and some questionable choices. The Pontiac Torpedo. Just the name alone stirs up images of a sleek, powerful machine cutting through the air with the precision and grace of a missile. It was a car that was supposed to embody the spirit of the future, a time when technology and design would come together to create something truly extraordinary. Introduced in the 1940s, the Torpedo was Pontiac's bold attempt to ride the wave of post-war optimism, to capture the hearts and imaginations of Americans who were ready for a new era of innovation and excitement on the open road. But like so many dreams of that era, the reality of the Torpedo was something altogether different. You see, when you look at a car like the Pontiac Torpedo, you can't help but feel a pang of nostalgia for a time when American automakers were willing to take risks, when the industry was alive with experimentation and a certain bravado that only the post-war boom could foster. It was a time when the future felt limitless, and cars were more than just a means of getting from point A to point B. They were rolling symbols of freedom, status, and the promise of progress. The Torpedo had all the makings of such a symbol, but something about it just didn't quite fit. In trying to be both a cutting-edge marvel of engineering and a nod to the grand, oversized cars of yesteryear, the Torpedo found itself in a peculiar design limbo. At first glance, the Pontiac Torpedo was certainly striking. Its massive front end was impossible to ignore, with a grille that seemed to extend forever and fenders so wide they almost dared the car to grow wings and take flight. But therein lay the problem. What was supposed to be aerodynamic ended up feeling bloated, like a ship that had been built too large to truly sail. The designers had dreamed of a car that would glide effortlessly along the highways, a modern masterpiece of form and function. Instead, they gave us something that looked more like a land-bound whale, all bulk and no finesse. But still, there's something endearing about the Torpedo's awkwardness, isn't there? It's a relic from a time when automakers were still figuring out what modernity really meant. It was a car stuck between two worlds, one foot in the sleek, futuristic designs that would come to define the 1950s, and the other in the grand, opulent tradition of the pre-war years. You can almost imagine the engineers and designers of the time, poring over blueprints, trying to find the right balance between the old and the new. Perhaps they wanted to honor the past while looking toward the future, but instead of achieving harmony, they created something that never quite found its place. In a way, the Torpedo's identity crisis reflects the mood of the era. America was on the brink of change, caught between the nostalgia for the golden age of motoring and the exciting new horizons that lay ahead. Cars like the Pontiac Torpedo were born in that transition period, when the world was moving faster than it had ever moved before, but the memories of what had been still lingered. The Torpedo, with its oversized front end and oddly balanced proportions, is almost like a metaphor for a country trying to reconcile its love for the big, bold, chrome-laden giants of the past with the streamlined efficiency and aerodynamic sophistication that the future demanded. The Torpedo's shortcomings, both in terms of style and performance, are part of what makes it so intriguing now, so many decades later. It was a car that never quite lived up to its name, but in doing so, it became a kind of cult classic. It's a reminder of what happens when ambition overshoots execution, when the dream is bigger than the reality. There's something wonderfully human about that. This idea that even the grandest plans sometimes fall short, but in their imperfection, they create something memorable, something that sticks with you long after the last model has rolled off the assembly line. Today, when we look back on the Pontiac Torpedo, We don't just see an awkwardly designed car with a bloated front end and a body that doesn't quite know what it wants to be. We see a piece of history, a snapshot of an era when the future felt like it was just around the corner, waiting to be shaped by the bold ideas of engineers and designers who weren't afraid to push the boundaries, even if they didn't always succeed. The Torpedo may not have been the sleek aerodynamic marvel it was supposed to be, but in its own strange, endearing way, it captured the spirit of a time when anything felt possible. And maybe that's why we remember it, because it's not just about the car itself, it's about what it represented. The dream of the future, the promise of something new and exciting, and the hope that even if we don't always get it right, we'll keep trying. In the end, the Pontiac Torpedo is a symbol of that relentless pursuit, even when the road ahead isn't quite as smooth as we hoped. The Willys Jeepster is one of those cars that you can't help but look at with a bit of curiosity. On paper, it seemed like a brilliant idea. Take the rugged, go-anywhere capability of the Jeep, beloved by soldiers and adventurers alike, and blend it with the comfort and styling of a passenger car. In the post-World War II era, Jeep had a strong reputation, thanks to its role in the war effort, and Willys Overland was eager to capitalize on that fame by introducing a new vehicle that could transition from battlefield to boulevard. But the result was the Willys Jeepster, a vehicle that, while charming in its own way, ultimately fell into a strange middle ground that left buyers scratching their heads. Looking at the Jeepster, you can immediately see where the confusion began. It had the unmistakable DNA of a Jeep, with its high ground clearance, exposed fenders, and classic 7-slot grille. Yet, it also had features that were distinctly aimed at a more urban, civilian crowd. An open-top design for a breezy, carefree driving experience, and a two-tone color scheme that made it look more like a leisure vehicle than a rugged off-roader. It was as if the designers wanted to create a hybrid, something that could appeal to both outdoor enthusiasts and city drivers. But in trying to do so, they created a vehicle that didn't fully satisfy either group. For those who were fans of the original Jeep, the Jeepster felt too soft, too diluted. Despite its Jeep-like appearance, it lacked the true off-road capability that made the original such a legend. It didn't have four-wheel drive, and its power was underwhelming, especially when compared to the tough, no-nonsense Jeeps that had proven their worth in the toughest conditions imaginable. The Jeepster looked like it could tackle a muddy trail, but the reality was, it was more suited to a gentle drive down a paved country road. On the flip side, for the average car buyer looking for a comfortable passenger car, the Jeepster was still too rugged, too utilitarian. It didn't have the smooth ride or the more luxurious features that people expected from cars in the late 1940s. Its open-top design, while fun in sunny weather, wasn't exactly practical for daily driving, especially in less than ideal conditions. The Jeepster was a car that sat in a no-man's land between rugged utility and suburban comfort, and buyers weren't quite sure what to make of it. Part of the problem with the Jeepster was that it didn't know what it wanted to be, and that uncertainty was reflected in how people responded to it. For some, it was a quirky, fun vehicle, a novelty that stood out from the more conventional cars of the time. There's no denying that the Jeepster had a certain charm. It was eye-catching, with its unique mix of rugged and refined design elements. But for most people, charm wasn't enough. They wanted a car that could either handle the rough terrain of the outdoors or provide a smooth, comfortable ride on the road. The Jeepster, despite its best efforts, did neither particularly well. In a way, the story of the Willys Jeepster is one of ambition clashing with reality. Willys Overland wanted to build a bridge between two worlds, the rugged utility of the Jeep and the growing demand for stylish, comfortable cars in post-war America. But the execution didn't quite work. The Jeepster ended up as an awkward blend, not rugged enough to satisfy Jeep purists and not refined enough to lure traditional car buyers. Still, there's a certain nostalgic appeal to the Willys Jeepster today. It's a reminder of a time when automakers were willing to take risks, to experiment with new ideas, even if they didn't always hit the mark. The Jeepster's quirky charm, its attempt to blend two opposing concepts, makes it a fascinating footnote in automotive history. It may not have been a sales success, but it's remembered today as a symbol of an era when anything felt possible in the world of car design, even if that meant creating something that didn't quite fit anywhere. And maybe that's what makes the Willys Jeepster so interesting. It's a vehicle that dared to be different, that tried to carve out a new niche at a time when the automotive world was changing rapidly. It might not have known exactly what it wanted to be, but in that uncertainty it became something memorable, something that stands out in a sea of more conventional cars. Today, the Jeepster is a reminder that sometimes it's the oddballs, the misfits, that we remember most fondly. The Nash Airflight, introduced in the late 1940s, was a bold attempt to push American automotive design into a new era. In the aftermath of World War II, when most automakers were simply rehashing pre-war designs, Nash took a different approach, embracing futuristic ideas that were aimed at revolutionizing how cars looked and performed. On paper, the Airflight was a technical marvel. Unibody construction, a focus on aerodynamics, and a fuel-efficient, enclosed design were all ahead of their time. Yet despite its mechanical innovations, the Airflight's design sparked a divisive reaction. Its bathtub shape, though modern in concept, left many drivers scratching their heads, unsure whether to embrace or reject its unusual aesthetic. At a time when cars were transitioning from the sharp, boxy designs of the 1930s and 1940s into more streamlined forms, Nash wanted to take aerodynamics seriously. The idea was that a car that could slip through the air with minimal resistance would not only perform better, but also use less fuel. An important selling point in the early post-war years, when efficiency was increasingly becoming part of the conversation. The Airflight's smooth, rounded body was unlike anything seen on American roads. Gone were the protruding fenders and sharp edges that had defined earlier automotive design. In their place was a curvaceous, seamless body that seemed to glide like a bubble. But while Nash's designers may have envisioned the Airflight as an aerodynamic masterpiece, many consumers saw it differently. The bathtub nickname was fitting and not exactly flattering. The Nash Airflight looked bulky and somewhat bloated, with its rounded lines giving it a plump, heavy appearance. It was as if the car had been overinflated, lacking the sleek, balanced proportions that people typically associated with a modern vehicle. While the design may have had functional merit in terms of airflow, the Airflight's look was a bit too extreme for mainstream tastes. In an era when consumers still appreciated the elegance of long hoods, chrome grills, and distinct, separate fenders, the Airflight's unified capsule-like body felt alien. It lacked the refined, confident stance that other cars of the period carried so naturally. Adding to its unusual visual presence was the car's height. The Nash Airflight had a high roofline, which contributed to its awkward proportions. From the side, it looked almost as tall as it was long, further exaggerating its rounded, bulbous shape. Compared to other cars that had more graceful slopes and lower profiles, the Airflight appeared top-heavy, like a design that had overemphasized functionality at the expense of aesthetic balance. People weren't quite ready for such a departure from the familiar designs they were used to, and while some admired Nash for pushing boundaries, many found the car's appearance off-putting. Despite its polarizing exterior, the Nash Airflight was not without its merits. Its unibody construction, rare for the time, made it more structurally rigid and safer than many other cars, which still relied on the more traditional body-on-frame designs. This new construction method also helped the car handle better and provided a quieter ride, insulating passengers from road noise more effectively. In that sense, the Airflight was ahead of its time, paving the way for future automotive trends that would prioritize comfort, safety, and efficiency. It was a forward-thinking vehicle that, in many ways, was simply too far ahead for the tastes of the day. The Airflight's interior was also quite modern, with spacious seating and an emphasis on comfort. The high roofline, while contributing to the car's ungainly external appearance, provided ample headroom, giving the cabin a more open and airy feel. Nash's attention to passenger comfort was commendable, with features like seats that could fold down into a bed, allowing travelers to rest during long road trips. These innovations spoke to a company that was thinking not just about how a car performed on the road, but about how people would use and live in their vehicles. But in the end, design is often what makes or breaks a car. And for the Nash Airflight, its look simply didn't resonate with the public. The bathtub shape, though grounded in scientific principles, seemed too unconventional, too removed from the sleek and glamorous styles that were starting to dominate the automotive world in the 1950s. While the Airflight may have been admired by some forward-thinking engineers and designers, the average car buyer wasn't ready for such a radical shift in appearance. Over time, the Nash Airflight has become something of a symbol for the challenges of introducing innovation in an industry as conservative as the automobile market. It was a car with ideas that were ahead of its time, but its appearance held it back from mainstream success. The Chrysler Thunderbolt was an audacious leap into the future, a concept car meant to signal Chrysler's bold vision of what automobiles could become. Debuting in 1940, it was a product of a time when the world was on the cusp of enormous change, both in terms of technology and global events. Chrysler wanted to make a statement with the Thunderbolt, showing off a futuristic design that would captivate the imagination of car enthusiasts. However, while it certainly turned heads, its bizarre, streamlined body left many puzzled rather than inspired. At a glance, the Thunderbolt looked more like a spaceship or a rolling art piece than a car that might ever populate American streets. Its fully enclosed wheels were one of the most striking design choices, giving the car an almost surreal, floating appearance. In an era when exposed wheels and fenders were the norm, the Thunderbolt's smooth, uninterrupted body seemed like it had come from another world. Chrysler's designers were clearly aiming for a vehicle that cut through the air with minimal resistance, and while the concept of aerodynamics was gaining traction at the time, the Thunderbolt's extreme interpretation of that idea felt more like a science experiment than a practical design. The car's body was nearly seamless, with rounded lines that flowed from front to back in one continuous, uninterrupted sweep. There were no visible door handles or other protuberances to break up the Thunderbolt's sleek silhouette. In a sense, the car was a marvel of design purity. Chrysler's team had stripped away all unnecessary details, leaving a form that was as smooth as a drop of water. But this smoothness also contributed to the Thunderbolt's oddness. It looked almost too perfect, too polished, as if it belonged in a wind tunnel rather than on city streets. Its name, Thunderbolt, conjured images of speed and power, and the car did boast some impressive engineering feats for its time. Under the hood, it was powered by a straight-8 engine, which gave it plenty of potential performance. However, its unconventional looks overshadowed any discussion of its actual capabilities. People simply couldn't get past the car's extreme design to appreciate what it could do. In a decade where automotive styling was still rooted in chrome grills, prominent headlights, and more traditionally angular forms, the Thunderbolt's radical departure from those norms made it a tough sell for the average consumer. The car's retractable hardtop was another futuristic feature, offering drivers a chance to experience the open air at the touch of a button, an idea that would become much more common in the decades to come. But at the time, such innovations felt more like gimmicks than practical solutions, further reinforcing the sense that the Thunderbolt was more a design exercise than a car built for real-world use. While Chrysler may have envisioned the Thunderbolt as a glimpse into the future, the car's reception suggested that it was perhaps too far ahead of its time. The fully enclosed wheels in particular gave it a cartoonish, almost toy-like quality that was hard for people to take seriously. It lacked the muscular stance or aggressive lines that typically appealed to car buyers. Instead, the Thunderbolt looked as if it had been sculpted in clay and left unfinished, its proportions too soft and too rounded to evoke the kind of awe Chrysler had hoped for. Despite this, the Thunderbolt remains an important piece of automotive history. It represents a time when car manufacturers were willing to take risks and explore the boundaries of design and technology, even if the results were not universally loved. In many ways, it paved the way for later concept cars that would also challenge conventional thinking, though few would do so in quite such an extreme and polarizing fashion. Today, the Chrysler Thunderbolt is appreciated more as a museum piece, a symbol of ambition and vision, even if it wasn't the commercial success Chrysler might have hoped for. It's a reminder that sometimes, in the pursuit of progress, You have to take bold steps, even if they lead to unexpected places. The Thunderbolt was not just a car, but a statement, a daring experiment in a time of uncertainty. And while it may never have made it into mass production, its legacy lives on as one of the most curious and memorable concept cars ever created. The Chevrolet Fleetmaster was introduced in 1946, just as the world was emerging from the shadow of World War II. It was a time of optimism, with the promise of innovation and progress felt in nearly every aspect of life. But while society was charging forward into the future, the Fleetmaster looked like it had been stuck in the past. With styling that seemed to belong more to the late 1930s than the mid-1940s, the car immediately gave off an air of being outdated. Its conservative, somewhat stodgy design didn't quite match the era's growing appetite for modernity and change. Chevrolet was in a unique position following the war. Like many other automakers, production had shifted to support the war effort. And when the war ended, they needed to quickly resume manufacturing cars for a market that had been starved of new models for years. As a result, many post-war cars, including the Fleetmaster, were essentially pre-war designs with minimal updates. This was a practical move, allowing Chevrolet to get back to production quickly, but it meant that the Fleetmaster lacked the kind of fresh, innovative spirit that consumers were beginning to crave. Visually, the Fleetmaster was solid but uninspired. Its rounded fenders, prominent grille, and high roofline were hallmarks of pre-war automotive design, a period when style was often dictated by practical concerns rather than aesthetic innovation. These design elements were functional and reliable, but by the late 1940s, they felt a bit too familiar. The Fleetmaster looked as though it had been lifted straight from the early years of the decade, without any of the flair or forward-thinking touches that were beginning to appear in other vehicles. The overall effect was a car that didn't excite or inspire. It was competent, dependable, and undeniably dull. Mechanically, the Fleetmaster wasn't a bad car. It was equipped with a 216 cubic inch inline-six engine, which provided decent, if unremarkable, performance for the time. The car's ride was smooth enough, and its reliability was a major selling point, particularly for a generation of buyers who placed high value on durability after the uncertainties of wartime. But even here, the Fleetmaster lacked the edge or innovation that might have helped it stand out in a rapidly changing market. Competitors like Ford and Chrysler were beginning to experiment with new technologies and bolder designs, making Chevrolet's approach feel somewhat complacent. Inside, the Fleetmaster followed a similar pattern. The interior was spacious and comfortable, designed to cater to families and individuals looking for a reliable, everyday car. However, the lack of modern features, something that would soon become a key selling point for cars in the following decade, meant that the Fleetmaster didn't offer much to differentiate itself from its peers. It was a car built for practicality, but in an era where excitement and innovation were becoming increasingly important to buyers, this focus on the basics came off as underwhelming. The Fleetmaster did find success in the immediate post-war years, largely because it was available when people needed cars and it was priced affordably. For many families, it represented the chance to own a vehicle again after years of rationing and scarcity. In that sense, the Fleetmaster played an important role in getting America back on the road. But as the 1940s gave way to the 1950s, a decade that would be defined by chrome, fins, and the pursuit of speed and style, the Fleetmaster was quickly left behind. What makes the Fleetmaster interesting today is the way it encapsulates the transitional period in which it was built. It was a car born out of necessity, a holdover from a bygone era that tried to fit into a world that was moving on. While it certainly wasn't a failure, the Fleetmaster's lack of innovation and its overly cautious design prevented it from becoming a standout model in Chevrolet's lineup. It's a reminder of how quickly taste can change in the automotive world, and how a car that seemed perfectly fine one moment can suddenly feel obsolete the next. In hindsight, the Fleetmaster serves as a symbol of a company caught between two worlds, one foot still in the past and the other tentatively stepping into the future. It may not have been the most exciting car on the road, but it played a part in helping to bridge the gap between the pre-war and post-war automotive landscapes. Today, it's remembered less for its own merits and more for what it represents. A moment in time when the world was changing, but not quite fast enough for Chevrolet's most conservative offering to keep up. The 1947 Studebaker Champion represented a significant moment for Studebaker as the brand emerged from the post-war era. At first glance, the Champion was everything consumers were looking for after years of wartime restrictions. A fresh design, a symbol of the future, and an opportunity to own something that felt new. However, what started as a promising model would soon be overshadowed by a controversial and divisive design element that would define its later versions, the infamous bullet nose front end. The Champion had a lot going for it initially. After all, it was one of the first truly new cars to hit the market after World War II, a stark contrast to the warmed-over pre-war designs that many automakers were still producing. Its streamlined body, sleek lines, and modern styling resonated with a generation hungry for innovation. Studebaker, known for its willingness to push the envelope in terms of design, seemed to be on the right track. The Champion's lightweight construction, thanks to a unibody design, and its relatively efficient 169 cubic inch inline-six engine made it an appealing choice for buyers looking for an affordable and practical post-war vehicle. But by 1950, Studebaker decided to take a bold leap in styling, introducing the bullet nose front end, a look that would forever be tied to the Champion's legacy. The idea behind the bullet nose design was to give the car a futuristic, jet-age appearance. The 1950s were a time when America was captivated by the idea of space exploration, advanced aviation, and the cutting-edge possibilities of the future. Automakers, including Studebaker, tried to tap into that cultural fascination by crafting cars that evoke speed, power, and modernity. The problem was that while Studebaker's designers may have had a sleek, aerodynamic vision in mind, the execution of the bullet nose design was awkward at best. The large, rounded nose that jutted out from the front of the car was meant to mimic the front of an airplane or rocket, but to many, it looked more like a peculiar growth. It disrupted the overall proportions of the car, making it appear front-heavy and ungainly. What was supposed to be an eye-catching feature became a divisive talking point, with some buyers loving the futuristic aesthetic, but many others feeling that the design was simply strange and unattractive. The bullet nose design wasn't just a stylistic gamble. It also signaled a turning point for Studebaker as a brand. Despite its innovative attempts, the company was struggling with quality control issues by the early 1950s. The production of the Champion, and Studebaker vehicles in general, began to suffer from mechanical problems and inconsistent build quality. The company's resources were stretched thin, and while they invested heavily in bold designs, the basics of reliability and performance were slipping through the cracks. As a result, the Champion, which was supposed to represent a forward-thinking, cutting-edge car, began to develop a reputation for being unreliable. Despite its struggles, the Champion still holds a nostalgic place in automotive history. It's a car that dared to be different, even if it didn't quite land the way Studebaker intended. The bullet nose front end, while polarizing, is a quintessential example of the experimental spirit of 1950s car design, when automakers weren't afraid to take risks and push the boundaries of what a car could look like. Today, the Champion, especially the bullet nose versions, has become something of a cult classic. It's the kind of car that you either love or hate, but either way, it's unforgettable. The 1947 to 1950 Studebaker Champion ultimately reflects both the highs and lows of mid-century American car design. On one hand, it was a fresh and innovative post-war model that gave drivers something new and exciting at a time when the country was hungry for progress. On the other hand, the car's later years became a cautionary tale of how a bold design choice, coupled with declining quality, can tarnish what could have been a lasting success. Though Studebaker's time as a major player in the automotive world would eventually come to an end, the Champion, and especially its bullet nose variant, remains a symbol of the company's ambition and willingness to take risks, even when those risks didn't always pay off. The 1940 Ford Deluxe station wagon, affectionately known as a Woody, epitomized an era when wood-paneled cars were seen as a luxurious and stylish choice. However, while the car's design carried a certain charm and nostalgia, it was also riddled with practical issues that would make it more of a relic than a lasting icon. The Ford Deluxe Woody wagon looked like a piece of mobile furniture, with its wooden body frame standing in stark contrast to the sleek all-metal designs that would soon dominate the automotive world. It was a car that felt like a product of its time, one that never quite adapted to the changing needs and tastes of the automotive landscape. In the 1930s and early 1940s, wood-bodied cars weren't entirely out of the ordinary. In fact, they were a sign of craftsmanship and exclusivity. Many station wagons were made with real wood, and owning a Woody was often seen as a status symbol. The Ford Deluxe station wagon took this trend and ran with it, offering a blend of solid metal and wooden panels that gave the car a distinctive, almost rustic look. The vehicle's wooden framing wasn't just decorative, it was an integral part of the car's structure. This made the Ford Deluxe a unique hybrid of sorts, where the old-world charm of carpentry met the new age of automotive engineering. But as beautiful and nostalgic as the Woody design was, it came with a host of issues. First and foremost was the upkeep. The wooden panels, though aesthetically pleasing, were far from practical. Wood requires constant maintenance, particularly when exposed to the elements. Without regular care, the wood could easily rot, warp, or crack. This was especially problematic in regions with high humidity or extreme weather conditions. Drivers of the Ford Deluxe wagon found themselves not just maintaining their engine and mechanical components, but also acting as part-time carpenters, tending to the varnish and ensuring the wood remained in good shape. This need for constant upkeep wasn't just an inconvenience, it was costly. The mix of wood and metal also created another problem: weight. The wooden frame added significant heft to the vehicle, making it heavier and less fuel efficient than its all-metal counterparts. It was a large, cumbersome car that didn't handle as well as sleeker, more modern vehicles. This bulkiness, combined with its relatively modest 85 horsepower engine, meant that the Ford Deluxe wagon wasn't exactly known for its performance. It was slow, and the added weight only exacerbated its handling issues. Despite its drawbacks, the Ford Deluxe station wagon had an undeniable charm. For families in the 1940s, it offered practicality and a touch of style. The spacious interior could accommodate large families, and the wood paneling made it stand out in a crowd of increasingly uniform, all-metal cars. It became particularly popular with surfers in the 1950s and 60s, who loved its roomy interior for storing surfboards and its retro vibe that matched the carefree lifestyle of the California coast. The car earned an iconic status in pop culture, often associated with beach culture and a simpler, more laid-back time. However, as post-war manufacturing technologies advanced, the impracticality of wood-bodied cars became more apparent. Automakers began to embrace modern materials like steel and aluminum, which were lighter, more durable, and required far less maintenance. The Woody wagon, once seen as a luxurious and exclusive option, quickly became outdated. By the late 1940s and early 1950s, the era of the wood-bodied car was effectively over. The 1940 Ford Deluxe station wagon remains a symbol of a bygone era, a time when cars were not just modes of transportation, but also statements of style and craftsmanship. In retrospect, its impracticalities, from the heavy wooden body to the constant maintenance, overshadow its initial allure. What was once seen as a hallmark of luxury and design became a quirky throwback. And today, the Ford Deluxe wagon is more likely to be found at classic car shows than on the open road. It's a reminder that while automotive design can capture the spirit of a moment, not all innovations age gracefully. The Woody, with its mix of natural materials and industrial ambition, is a perfect example of this. The Tucker 48, often referred to as the Tucker Torpedo, was one of the most ambitious cars of its time, aiming to revolutionize the automotive industry with advanced safety features and futuristic design elements. Preston Tucker, the man behind the car, had bold ideas that were far ahead of the 1940s. He envisioned a vehicle that would prioritize safety, innovation, and performance, features that were largely ignored by most car manufacturers of the era. However, despite the hype and promise, the Tucker 48 is remembered not for what it accomplished, but for the scandal that brought it down. It stands as a cautionary tale of grand ambition, derailed by controversy, financial trouble, and the sheer challenges of breaking into an entrenched industry. The story of the Tucker 48 begins with Preston Tucker's dream of creating a car that would be decades ahead of its time. In an era when most automakers focused on incremental improvements, Tucker sought to leapfrog them with radical innovation. His car boasted features that were unheard of in the late 1940s, such as a rear-mounted engine, pop-out windshields to prevent injury during accidents, and a Cyclops center headlight that turned with the steering wheel for better visibility around corners. Tucker also planned to include seatbelts, a safety feature that wouldn't become standard in cars for decades. His vision was to create a car that was not only sleek and futuristic in appearance, but one that would keep its passengers safe. Revolutionary ideas that could have changed the trajectory of automobile design. Visually, the Tucker 48 was stunning. Its long, low-slung body gave it an aerodynamic look, and its signature center headlight gave it an unmistakable appearance on the road. The car's design was futuristic, sleek, and elegant, almost spaceship-like for the time. It looked like the kind of car that belonged in the world of tomorrow, and it sparked the imagination of the public, who were eager to see a revolutionary vehicle after the austere years of World War II. The car was poised to be a game-changer in the automotive world, an embodiment of the American spirit of innovation and progress. But behind the scenes, trouble was brewing. Despite the public excitement and the innovative features of the Tucker 48, the company faced insurmountable challenges. Financial difficulties, production delays, and growing pressure from established automakers all took their toll. Tucker's business practices came under scrutiny, and the company was accused of misleading investors. The Securities and Exchange Commission launched an investigation, leading to allegations of fraud. Although Tucker was ultimately acquitted of all charges, the damage to his company's reputation was irreversible. By the time production was halted, only 51 Tucker 48s had been made. Despite the car's groundbreaking features, many questioned its reliability. Some of the advanced technologies, like the rear-mounted engine, were difficult to implement in mass production, and the car's mechanical complexity raised concerns about how well it would hold up over time. Tucker's inexperience in mass automobile production also became a factor, as the company struggled to scale its operations and manage the high costs of building such an advanced car. In the end, it wasn't the car itself that failed, but the business behind it. Tucker's dream of creating a revolutionary vehicle was undone by the practical realities of the automotive industry and the pressures of running a startup in a fiercely competitive market. The Tucker 48 has since become a symbol of what could have been. It represents both the potential for innovation and the harsh realities of business. Many car enthusiasts and historians view the Tucker 48 as a vehicle that was simply too far ahead of its time, a car that could have changed the industry had it been given a fair chance. In retrospect, the Tucker 48's downfall is often seen as a product of industry politics and corporate maneuvering by the big three automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, who were threatened by Tucker's disruptive ideas. Today, the Tucker 48 is a prize collector's item, with surviving models fetching millions at auctions. Its rarity, combined with its historical significance, has made it one of the most coveted classic cars in the world. The car's legacy lives on, not only as a symbol of innovation, but also as a reminder of how difficult it is to bring radical new ideas to market in an industry dominated by established players. The Tucker 48 remains a fascinating chapter in automotive history. It's a story of bold ideas, ambitious design, and the risks involved in chasing a dream. While it didn't revolutionize the car industry in the way that Preston Tucker had hoped, the car left a lasting impression. It has inspired countless automotive designers, engineers, and entrepreneurs to push the boundaries of what's possible. The Packard Clipper debuted in 1941, a time of immense optimism and ambition, just before World War II dramatically shifted the landscape of civilian automobile production. Introduced amidst a backdrop of innovation, the Clipper was touted as a beacon of modern design, showcasing an aerodynamic silhouette that promised to usher in a new era of automotive elegance. With its sleek lines and refined aesthetic, it aimed to capture the imaginations of consumers eager for a vehicle that embodied the spirit of progress and sophistication. However, the timing of its release would prove to be one of its greatest challenges. Upon its debut, the Clipper was immediately recognized for its unique styling. The car's streamlined shape was a striking departure from the boxy and heavy designs that characterize pre-war vehicles, positioning it as a forward-thinking option in a rapidly changing automotive landscape. Its design was not merely about looks, it was intended to enhance performance through improved aerodynamics. Yet despite these ambitious intentions, the realities of its execution soon became apparent. As the war came to an end and production capacities ramped up, the consumer automotive market underwent a transformation. Post-war buyers were not solely interested in aesthetics. They desired vehicles that were functional, efficient, and reflective of their new lifestyles. The Packard Clipper, with its substantial size and weight, began to feel out of touch with these evolving expectations. While initially marketed as a spacious vehicle suitable for families, its imposing dimensions translated into a cumbersome driving experience. Maneuverability was a significant concern, as drivers found the Clipper difficult to handle, particularly in urban environments where tighter turns and parking were commonplace. The Clipper's heavy build, although a nod to its perceived luxury and comfort, contributed to sluggish performance that left much to be desired. What was once celebrated as spaciousness soon became a burden as consumers began to gravitate toward more compact and efficient vehicles that aligned with their needs. The post-war era called for cars that not only provided comfort, but also offered practicality, and the Clipper's grandiose proportions made it increasingly impractical for everyday use. In a market that was rapidly shifting towards smaller, fuel-efficient models, the Clipper struggled to find its place. Furthermore, the Clipper's ambitious aerodynamic design, while a noble attempt at innovation, became a double-edged sword. As consumer preferences evolved, the car's hefty weight began to symbolize the very excess that the post-war population sought to move away from. With rising fuel prices and a growing emphasis on efficiency, the Clipper's heavy frame became a liability, making it less appealing to the average buyer. Its once enviable status began to wane as competitors who swiftly adapted to changing market demands gained favor. As the 1950s unfolded, the Packard Clipper's initial allure faded into the background, becoming emblematic of a brand struggling to keep pace with the times. The clumsy handling and cumbersome dimensions overshadowed its elegant design, relegating it to a niche status that could not withstand the competitive pressures of the automotive market. Rivals like Ford and Chevrolet embraced the new ethos of the era, creating cars that were not only stylish but also practical and efficient. In contrast, the Clipper felt increasingly outdated, a nostalgic reminder of a bygone era that could no longer resonate with modern sensibilities. The decline of the Packard Clipper serves as a cautionary tale in the annals of automotive history, a poignant reminder of the complexities inherent in innovation. It illustrates the delicate balance between visionary design and practical execution, highlighting how even the most well-intentioned ideas can falter when they do not align with the evolving desires of consumers. While the Clipper may have been conceived as a harbinger of modernity, it ultimately became a symbol of ambition that failed to translate into success, caught in the tumultuous transition of an industry in flux. In retrospect, the Packard Clipper remains a significant chapter in the story of American automotive history. Its aerodynamic aesthetics and bold intentions continue to spark interest among car enthusiasts and historians alike, evoking a sense of nostalgia for a time when innovation seemed boundless. Yet, it also serves as a reminder of the importance of adaptability in the face of changing consumer needs, an enduring lesson for manufacturers navigating the ever-shifting landscape of the automotive market. As we reflect on the Clipper, We celebrate its ambition while recognizing the challenges that ultimately defined its legacy, leaving an indelible mark on the collective memory of car enthusiasts and a poignant lesson for future generations. The Willys Americar, introduced in the late 1930s, emerged during a pivotal moment in American automotive history. As the country was recovering from the Great Depression, there was a pressing need for affordable, reliable transportation. Willys Overland, a company with a storied background in producing rugged vehicles, sought to fill this gap with the Americar, a vehicle designed with simplicity and functionality in mind. However, while the intentions behind the Americar were commendable, its execution left much to be desired, and it ultimately became emblematic of the struggles faced by many manufacturers during that era. From the outset, the Americar was characterized by its modest powertrain. Equipped with a small inline-4 engine, the vehicle struggled to deliver the kind of performance that consumers were beginning to crave. The engine's lack of horsepower meant that the Americar was not only slow to accelerate, but also felt lethargic on the road, particularly when compared to its competitors that were starting to push the boundaries of speed and power. As car enthusiasts and average drivers alike began to seek out more thrilling driving experiences, the Americar's uninspiring performance became one of its most significant drawbacks, limiting its appeal in a rapidly evolving market. Visually, the Americar was a product of its time, reflecting the design trends prevalent in the late 1930s. However, while many manufacturers were experimenting with bold shapes and striking features, the Americar's rounded, boxy silhouette appeared dated, lacking the visual dynamism that characterized many of its contemporaries. Its plain aesthetics rendered it virtually invisible in a market filled with vehicles that boasted vibrant colors, eye-catching designs, and innovative features. The Americar's lack of charisma made it difficult for it to compete with more exciting options, which often drew consumers' attention at dealerships and on the road. Despite its shortcomings, the Willys Americar found a second life in the post-war era, particularly as hot rodding began to take off in the United States. Car enthusiasts and hobbyists recognized the Americar's potential as a canvas for customization, given its relatively lightweight construction and simple design. This transformation from a basic economy car to a beloved platform for hot rods showcased the creativity and resourcefulness of the American automotive community. Enthusiasts began modifying the Americar, upgrading its engine, enhancing its aesthetics, and giving it a new lease on life as a performance vehicle. This shift in perception allowed the Americar to carve out a niche within the vibrant culture of automotive personalization, but it often overshadowed the car's original, unremarkable form. Looking back on the Willys Americar, it serves as a fascinating case study in the evolution of the American automobile. Its journey reflects the challenges and triumphs faced by manufacturers striving to meet consumer demands while navigating a rapidly changing landscape. While it may have been designed as a basic, budget-friendly vehicle, the Americar's story is also a testament to the ingenuity of car enthusiasts who saw potential where others did not. Ultimately, the Americar embodies the complexities of automotive design and consumer expectations. While it fell short in many areas, performance, aesthetics, and innovation, it nonetheless left an indelible mark on the automotive world. Its later transformation into a hot rod favorite highlights the idea that even the most unassuming vehicles can find a place in the hearts of enthusiasts, proving that the love for cars transcends the boundaries of their original design and purpose. The Willys Americar may not have revolutionized the automotive landscape, but its legacy continues to resonate within the realms of customization and automotive nostalgia, reminding us of a time when simplicity was cherished and potential lay waiting beneath the surface. The Kaiser Virginia emerged in the early 1950s as a bold experiment that aimed to redefine the American sedan landscape. Positioned as one of the first production hardtop sedans, it set out to marry the elegance of a hardtop roof with the practicality of a four-door design. This ambitious vehicle was designed to attract buyers looking for something innovative and stylish in an era marked by post-war optimism and burgeoning automotive aspirations. However, the Virginian's journey from concept to reality was fraught with challenges that ultimately hindered its success. From a visual standpoint, the Kaiser Virginian was undeniably striking, yet its design choices left many scratching their heads. The elongated body and awkward proportions created a silhouette that was anything but graceful. The high roofline and bulky front end clashed with the sleek, streamlined aesthetics that were becoming the hallmark of the era. While contemporaries were producing cars with curves and flowing lines that symbolized speed and modernity, the Virginian's design felt heavy-handed and cumbersome. It appeared more like an awkward prototype than a polished product, making it difficult for buyers to embrace it wholeheartedly. Compounding its design challenges was the Virginian's pricing strategy. Marketed at a premium compared to its rivals, the car entered a segment increasingly characterized by value-conscious consumers. Buyers were drawn to the allure of innovation, yet they hesitated to invest heavily in a vehicle that seemed to lack the refinement and performance expected at its price point. The Virginian's high cost, coupled with its unconventional appearance, made it a hard sell in a market eager for both quality and style. Potential buyers often gravitated toward more established brands that offered a proven mix of reliability and desirability, leaving the Virginian struggling to carve out its niche. Moreover, while the Kaiser Virginian aimed to introduce features that were ahead of their time, its performance failed to match expectations. With a focus on innovation, the Virginian was supposed to offer a unique driving experience, but many drivers found it underwhelming. The vehicle's handling was often criticized as cumbersome, lacking the spirited drive and agility that consumers sought. This disconnect between the car's innovative aspirations and its real-world performance created a perception that the Virginian was more a concept than a contender in the competitive automotive market. The historical context of the Virginian's launch also plays a crucial role in understanding its fate. Emerging in the wake of World War II, the automotive industry was undergoing rapid transformation, with consumer preferences shifting toward more streamlined, fuel-efficient, and stylish vehicles. The Kaiser Virginian, however, seemed to resist this evolution. It was a time when American drivers were increasingly enamored with the idea of cars that combined practicality with an air of sophistication. In contrast, the Virginian's design felt trapped in an identity crisis, unable to fully embrace the modernity of the time. Ultimately, the Kaiser Virginian serves as a poignant reminder of the complexities inherent in automotive innovation. While it was an ambitious attempt to challenge conventions and introduce a fresh take on the sedan, its awkward proportions, high price, and lack of refinement prevented it from achieving commercial success. Today, the Virginian is viewed not just as a vehicle, but as a fascinating chapter in the annals of automotive history, a testament to the dreams and aspirations of an era marked by bold experimentation and the inevitable challenges of realizing those visions. In reflecting on the Virginian, we are reminded of the delicate balance between ambition and execution, and how the desire to innovate can sometimes lead to unexpected outcomes. It stands as a symbol of the risks taken in the pursuit of greatness, a fleeting glimpse into what might have been in the ever-evolving world of automobiles. The Graham Hollywood emerged during a dynamic period in automotive history, representing not just a vehicle, but an era of bold experimentation and shifting consumer desires. Launched in the early 1940s, the Hollywood was one of the first production hardtop sedans in America, a daring endeavor by Graham Page Motors as it sought to reclaim its place in a fiercely competitive market. In a time when post-war optimism was beginning to shape the American landscape, the Hollywood was conceived as a blend of innovation and nostalgia, a car that aimed to capture the spirit of modernity while also invoking a sense of elegance and grace. At first glance, the Hollywood's streamlined design was striking, inspired heavily by the aerodynamic lines of the Cord 810, which had captivated car enthusiasts just a few years prior. With its swoopy contours and smooth silhouette, the Hollywood aimed to project an image of sophistication and forward-thinking design. The intention was clear: to attract discerning buyers who wanted more than just a means of transportation. They sought a statement piece, a symbol of style that reflected the changing times. Yet, as the calendar turned to 1941, it became increasingly apparent that the automotive world was evolving rapidly, leaving the Hollywood struggling to keep pace. Despite its ambitious design, the Hollywood was met with mixed reviews from consumers and critics alike. While the intention behind its aesthetic was to evoke a sense of luxury, many found its proportions to be awkward. The oversized front and bulbous rear created an uneasy balance, making the car appear almost cartoonish in some respects. In a marketplace that was shifting towards streamlined, minimalist designs, the Hollywood's retro flair quickly began to feel outdated. Buyers, eager for vehicles that embodied the spirit of the post-war era, turned their attention to cars that offered cleaner lines and a more cohesive aesthetic. Performance, too, became a critical issue for the Hollywood. While it was designed to stand out visually, the driving experience did not match the car's bold appearance. Engine performance was underwhelming, leaving drivers yearning for the power and excitement that more established brands were beginning to offer. This disconnect between the car's striking design and its lackluster performance only compounded its difficulties in attracting buyers. The Graham Hollywood was caught in an identity crisis. It wanted to be perceived as a modern marvel while grappling with the realities of mechanical shortcomings. As World War II loomed on the horizon, the automotive landscape began to shift dramatically. Many manufacturers pivoted to support the war effort, retooling their factories to produce military vehicles and equipment. This transition left less room for consumer vehicles, and the focus on innovation began to tilt heavily toward practicality. The Hollywood, with its quirky design and mediocre performance, became increasingly irrelevant in a market that was demanding more than just eye-catching aesthetics. It felt more like a relic from a bygone era than a cutting-edge vehicle meant to represent the future. Today, the Graham Hollywood is viewed through a lens of nostalgia, remembered as a curious artifact of a time when the automotive industry was rife with experimentation. It serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between innovation and market demands, illustrating the risks taken by companies that dared to venture off the beaten path. While the Hollywood may not have achieved commercial success, it encapsulates the spirit of an era that valued creative expression, even when those aspirations did not resonate with the public. The Hollywood stands as a testament to both ambition and caution, illustrating the challenges faced by automotive designers and manufacturers. In an industry characterized by rapid change and fierce competition, it remains a symbol of dreams that, while not fully realized, pushed the boundaries of what was possible. The Graham Hollywood may have ultimately faded into obscurity, but its story lives on as part of the rich tapestry of automotive history, a reminder of the aspirations and missteps that defined a transformative era in American car culture. Ladies and gentlemen, gather around as we embark on a nostalgic journey back to the 1940s and 1950s, a time when American cars were not just a means of transportation, but symbols of freedom, individuality, and, most importantly, the dreams of a burgeoning post-war society. Today, we turn our attention to a rather curious character from this golden age of automobiles, the Crosley CC sedan. Now, at first glance, the Crosley CC might seem like a mere footnote in automotive history, but it embodies a unique blend of ambition, charm, and the unmistakable spirit of its era. Imagine a time when America was still shaking off the dust of the Great Depression, and the world was adjusting to the joys and complexities of modern living. In this landscape, the Crosley CC sedan emerged, targeting the budget-conscious buyer with a promise of affordability and practicality. It was a car designed for those who desired mobility without the burdens of excess. With its diminutive size, the Crosley CC was truly one of the tiniest cars on the market. It stood as a testament to the era's ingenuity, where space was at a premium and efficiency reigned supreme. But therein lies both its allure and its limitation. The CC's ultra-compact design was both a marvel and a novelty. It could easily squeeze into the tightest of parking spots, making it a darling of urban dwellers who craved convenience. Yet for all its practicality, this tiny titan struggled to hold its ground in a rapidly evolving automotive landscape. Under the hood, the Crosley CC was powered by a meager 26 horsepower engine. An impressive feat of engineering, perhaps, but far from thrilling. It was a vehicle that prioritized economy over exhilaration, struggling to keep pace with the ever-increasing speeds of the American highways. Picture the scene: a tiny Crosley meandering along a bustling road, its tiny wheels spinning furiously while larger cars zoomed past, leaving it in a cloud of dust. In an era defined by muscle and power, the CC often found itself overlooked, even mocked, as it valiantly fought to assert its presence on the roads. Step inside, and you were met with a bare-bones interior that reflected the car's budget-friendly ethos. The seats were utilitarian, the dashboard basic, and the lack of frills made it feel less like a car and more like a utilitarian box on wheels. For some, this simplicity offered a certain charm, a no-nonsense approach that resonated with those who valued function over flair. But for many, the absence of comfort and style left much to be desired. Despite these shortcomings, the Crosley CC developed a loyal following. Its quirky charm and sheer uniqueness appealed to a niche market of enthusiasts who embraced its eccentricities. The CC was a reminder that not all cars had to conform to the same mold. It was an ode to individuality in a time when conformity often reigned. Yet as much as it captured the hearts of a few, the CC's sales figures never soared. It became more of a novelty, a quirky little car that turned heads and sparked conversations, but ultimately failed to make a significant impact in the automotive world. As the years rolled on and consumer preferences shifted, the Crosley CC sedan began to fade into obscurity. The market evolved, demanding larger, more powerful vehicles that could accommodate the growing needs of families and the expanding road infrastructure. The CC, with its limited performance and compact size, was increasingly seen as a relic of a bygone era, a car that simply couldn't keep pace with the changing times. Today, we remember the Crosley CC sedan, not just as an underdog in the automotive story, but as a symbol of an era defined by hope, resilience, and the desire for something different. Its tale reminds us that innovation comes in many forms, and that sometimes the quirkiest creations can leave a lasting impression, even if they don't always achieve commercial success. So, as we reflect on the Crosley CC sedan, let us celebrate its spirit, a tiny car with big dreams, a vehicle that dared to be different in a world that often preferred the familiar. In our fast-paced lives today, the CC stands as a nostalgic reminder to cherish the unique, to embrace the unconventional, and to always drive forward with a sense of adventure. Thank you. There you have it. The 13 worst and silliest American cars from the 1940s. From cars that look like bathtubs to those that were over-engineered failures. This list proves that even in a decade shaped by war and recovery, automakers could still make some head-scratching decisions. Which of these 1940s oddballs do you think is the silliest? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more automotive history and fun.